Hey, Tommy from the Run Testers with another running shoe versus. In this video, we are going to be taking a look at the Adidas Adizero Adios Pro 3 and the Adidas Prime X Strung. Now, before I start, I was sent the Prime X Strung from SportsShoes in order to do this review. I'm not paid to do this review. I can say whatever I want, but big thanks to SportsShoes for sorting these out so I could actually do the review. Right, let's jump in. The Adidas Adios Prime X Strung costs £230 or $300. It weighs in at 255 grams or 9 ounces for men in a size 8, and the drop is 8.5 millimeters. The Adidas Adizero Adios Pro 3 costs £220 or $230. It weighs in at 218 grams or 7.7 ounces for men in a size 8, and the drop is 6.5 millimeters. The Adios Prime X Strung is a super shoe that's designed to take learnings from Adidas's popular race shoes and apply it to training at a faster pace. The most noticeable feature in the shoe, aside from the carbon energy rods, is the lofty 50mm stack height of Lightstrike Pro midsole foam, designed to offer propulsive level of energy return. This version of the shoe features Adidas's Strung upper, which is designed to offer a comfortable fitted feel created by mapping the fibres on an individual thread basis. The shoe also has a grippy Continental outsole rubber to deal with different road conditions and to protect the midsole foam. The Adizero Adios Pro 3 is the latest version of Adidas's long-distance race shoe. It features Energy Rods 2.0 that run the full length of the shoe, working alongside 2 layers of Lightstrike Pro midsole foam to deliver a stiff ride that has a high level of energy return. There's a redesigned upper that aims to be breathable while offering a good level of support and structure, along with ample padding around the heel and ankle collar. The outsole is covered with a generous layer of Continental rubber for grip when running at speed, as well as protection for the midsole foam. It's a shoe that's best suited to longer distance races, from half marathon to marathon, helping runners to maintain a consistent pace with less softness and bounce than competitors' super shoes out there. Okay, so the fit for me in these two shoes is really interesting. I would say true to size in both of them, but I do have problems with both of these shoes, which suggests to me that I might not have quite the right size based on what I should be wearing. The Adidas Adios Pro 3, it's definitely true to size for me, but I do get a lot of rubbing on the toes. So might be that I should probably go half a size up. It feels fine apart from that, but I do get a lot of rubbing around 2 or 3 of the toes on my left foot. So yeah, maybe look at going up half a size in the Adios Pro 3s. The Prime X Strung, this is a really interesting one. Again, I'd probably say go up half a size because I get some major heel rub issues on the back of the shoe, and I hardly ever get heel rub issues. All the shoes I test, I can probably count on one hand where I've had any sorts of heel rubbing at all. But on the left foot, on the Prime X Strung, I do get a lot of heel rub on this back section here. And I did a racing, a half marathon race in these, and it was really painful by the end. I really was not enjoying wearing these. So I would say they feel like they're true to size, but because of those rubbing issues, possibly go up half size.
So on the fit, I have 2 different sizes in the Pro 3 and the Prime X. With the Pro 3, I'm a UK 9.5, which is half a size up on my normal size, and I'm true to size in the Prime X with the UK 9. I think it's mainly just down to the way the Pro 3 tapers at the front there, which means I get more room by going up half a size, and it fits very well. Other than that length, I've had no concerns with the fit on the Pro 3 at all, but with the Prime X, I've had quite a lot of heel rub. It's got similar heel designs, but it's just a bit wider at the back there on the Prime X. I get a slightly more secure hold with the Pro 3 and haven't had any heel rub problems there, but yeah, with the Prime X, it got quite bad. Even when I heel locked it, I've had quite nasty heel rub.
So when it comes to fit, I ran in the UK 8.5 in both of these shoes, and I would recommend going true to size. So there's a bit of a documented problem with the Adios Pro 3 where the lace eyelets around the toe knuckle can be a problem if you've got wide feet, and they do rub. A lot of people have reported kind of blistering, and that is not the case on the Prime X Strung. I found them much better, roomier fit. I think overall the fit is better, but I'd still recommend going true to size in both of these shoes.
Okay, so these are 2 really interesting shoes to review. I've used the Adios Pro 3 loads of times. I've raced in it a few times, and I do think it's a good shoe. I think it's one of the top tier carbon plate shoes out at the moment. I don't think it's the best. I don't think it's in the top maybe 3 or 4, but it is a good shoe, and I think it skews more towards that marathon distance. I don't feel like there's a massive loads of pop in this shoe. I don't feel like at 5k and 10k it really benefits me in any way. But when you're running at those longer consistent paces, it's a very comfortable shoe. It just ticks along nicely. There's a nice rolling motion to it. The foam is a little bit firmer than what maybe you'd get in like the Vaporfly. So yeah, I think it's a solid shoe, and for some people running marathons, I think it's a fantastic option as a carbon plate shoe. The Prime X Strung is an interesting one. I've been desperate to try this for a while because I love cushion shoes. I love loads of midsole foam in them. I love a bit of bounce, and this on paper just looks like the perfect shoe for me. And in many ways it is. It is such an enjoyable shoe to wear. When you are running on road and you're training at a consistent pace, maybe tempo training or something like that, and you've got a long way to go, it really does help you. You just bounce along nicely. You really just sort of powers you through very comfortably and makes you feel like you're not putting in a lot of effort. Now, the problem I have with it though, that 50mm stack height, it's almost unnecessary. I don't think any shoe needs a 50mm stack height. But you really notice it in this shoe. When I'm out running in this, I really have to pay attention to where I'm running. And I normally would only like to wear this shoe if I'm going on roads that I know are flat, not uneven, not rocks and pebbles and stuff on it. Because if you look at the back of this, the Prime X Strung, it's such a thin midsole foam. Even the Adios Pro 3's got a bit of a wider base to it. So yeah, it's a really niche shoe, and for me, it's fun, it's great, I really enjoy it, but I just feel it's so unstable when I'm running in it, and I don't feel confident when I'm running in it. When I did a half marathon, I did Eastbourne half marathon in this shoe, and I really, a few times when I was getting tired, I did land on the road on a pebble or a bit of a curb or something, and I really did feel my ankle was going, and it's not a very comfortable shoe to wear if you want stability and you're at all worried about twisting your ankle or anything like that, because there's been many a times wearing this shoe where I've got close, and but other than that, it is such a fun shoe. It's a really nice shoe for certain conditions, and I really enjoy it. Now, the difference between these shoes is interesting because they're very similar in a lot of ways. Obviously, they've got the similar materials in. Obviously, they've got similar looks to them. They've got similar design features like the carbon forks in them. But they do ride very differently. So the Prime X does feel very bouncy, does really feel so efficient. You can notice it under your feet, and it just sort of leaps you forward as you're going. It's like sort of like running on pogo sticks or something. Whereas the Adidas Pro 3, which is the race shoe, doesn't really feel like that for me. It just feels a little bit more subtle, and it just comes into its own when you're running over longer distance. It doesn't feel to me like there's a bounce or anything in it, which is not a bad thing at all, and it's actually probably better for some people. I'd probably say that this is the more natural feeling shoe out of the two, by a long shot. And I think the X Strung is just a very niche shoe. It's like a fun shoe. It's but I don't think I'd advise anyone to get this shoe unless I really knew what type of runner they were, just because it's a risky move getting this shoe if you're not too sure if you're going to be able to handle that really big stack height as well as the thin midsole foam.
So for my run tests in these shoes, I've done lots and lots of miles. I've probably done hundreds of miles in both the shoes. I've done everything from racing proper race marathons, doing half marathons. I've done all out 10Ks, fast 5Ks, fast miles. I've even done kind of slow sort of plodding kind of training runs just to see how they cope when you're moving at a much kind of slower clip, to test that kind of stability and that protection. So yeah, pretty much thrown everything you can at these race shoes in kind of equal measure. I've also done a quick 1 mile side by side, and here's what I've made of my run test. So I've just done my usual side by side 1 mile test where I'm wearing the Adios Pro on the right foot. I've got the Adidas Prime X Strung on the left foot, just to have a look at the differences. And I think there's a couple of big kind of notable differences here. The first is when you first put them on, the fit, I think, of the Strung is much better. Those Strung uppers to me make a huge difference. It's just got overall kind of better step-in comfort, and just generally it's more comfortable on the foot as you're running. The uppers kind of disappear with the Adios Pro 3. I can still feel them as I'm walking now. There's tightness in that kind of big toe knuckle, and they just don't feel like they're ever sort of right, kind of correctly in place. You know, you could just feel very aware of the uppers on the Adios Pro 3. I think it's one of the letdowns of the shoe, really. I think, there's lots to commend the Adios Pro 3. I think it's a really good solid race shoe. But the one thing that I think that lets it down the most is the uppers, and I think that's the big distinction here. The Prime X has almost got an Adios Pro 3 ride, but they fixed the uppers, which makes it a much more comfortable race shoe over longer distances, and that's something that I found doing all of the tests that I've done. So when it comes to the ride, these are both lively, punchy, good race shoes, no doubt about it. They're both fast. I enjoy running in them both. They're both, I think, could easily help you to good marathon times. Obviously, major difference here, the Prime X Strung, you haven't got that race legal stack height. If you care about that, then that's going to be an issue. You want to swap them out, and the Adios Pro 3 will be a better shoe. One thing, I think the Prime X Strung's, that overall kind of midsole base, the Light Strike Pro foam, whether it's the slightly higher stack, whether it's the way that the Light Strike Pro is tuned, I don't know, or the carbon plate is tuned, but it feels softer overall across the whole bed of the footbed. There's a bit of a firmer landing, I think, on the Adios Pro 3, and that runs all the way kind of from heel to toe. So you get a little bit more squish to the ground and then response from the Prime X Strung. It's a little bit more of sort of firmer engagement, I think, in the Adios Pro 3. So you have to choose which one of those you like best. If you want something that's going to be a little bit softer initially on landing and then spring back, I think the Prime X Strung is the one that has that more. I think overall, stability-wise, these are both kind of wobbly and slightly unstable shoes. I think I found it with the Prime X Strung, you definitely kind of, when you're turning tight corners, you kind of slide off that main bed of the foot. I don't think that the heel cutaways always kind of surprise me in these shoes, because that's one of the reasons I think when you're turning, if you land, that's one thing that always feels like it affects the stability anyway. On both shoes, you've still got that feeling. I think it's slightly more pronounced maybe in the Adios Pro 3, and that kind of firm kind of spine landing that I'm talking about, I think also affects that. You want to be landing in a kind of very sort of straight line, in a very straight plane, in order to get the most out of the Adios Pro 3. I think there's a bit more maneuverability in the overall in the Prime X Strung, which means that you maybe can land, you've got a bit more of a wider kind of landing platform, a bit more kind of range in how you can land in order to engage that overall foam. So there's also marginally more room in the toe box on the Strung than there is on the Adios Pro 3, so that's another thing that affects the overall comfort. And I think on longer races, if you have a problem with your toes bashing and getting black toenails on kind of marathon distance or longer endurance races, then the Prime X Strung is probably going to give you a little bit more room to avoid that.
So there's a lot of similarities to the two shoes in terms of the stuff that you've got in the midsole here, with the main thing being that big lump of Light Strike Pro foam, which is a very nice, bouncy, propulsive foam, pretty lightweight, and that dictates that they do feel quite similar on the run overall, but obviously with the difference that you've got a bit more Light Strike Pro foam in the Prime X, plus those extra energy blades under the forefoot to add a little bit more punch to your toe off. With the Pro 3, I did actually love it out of the box. First time I did it, just felt quite stiff and not that great at really any pace, but it softened up quite quickly. I think the energy rods are broken a little bit, the whole thing settled, and now it is a very comfortable, propulsive shoe that I really enjoy doing long runs in, lots of training in, and I think it's a very good racing shoe obviously as well. That probably steers more towards the long distances. There was no break-in period at all with the Prime X, went straight into fast running with it, and it felt fantastic. It's got certainly a little bit of extra oomph and propulsion compared to the Pro 3, and a softer feel overall, because you do feel the carbon energy rods in this shoe a little bit more, and it feels a little bit more grounded. It's obviously not at all a grounded shoe looking at that stack, but it's it is compared to the Prime X, which is just all about that soft feeling and bounce underfoot, and you get a little bit more punch off your toes with those extra energy blades. So it does translate to a softer feeling all round, and then a slightly more propulsive one with the Prime X. Downsides of it, obviously, that it's a little bit heavier, but you don't really notice that weight on the run between these two shoes, I found. But also it feels like it's got a narrower heel and just a narrower design in general, and a little bit more unstable. Like, obviously it looks pretty similar to the Prime X all round. They've got similar cutouts, but the higher stack, the narrow feeling at the heel just makes it a little bit more wobbly, and just means you have to focus a little bit more about where you're running when you're using the Prime X. You've got to look out for any holes in the pavement, that kind of thing. Obviously, the Pro 3 is not a stable shoe, but it feels stable compared to the Prime X. So it's also got a slightly lower drop, although I think because this feels a little bit softer to me, at the heel in particular, the drop doesn't seem that different between the two shoes. So yeah, a lot of similarities between the two shoes, both nice propulsive shoes with a big kind of booming, bouncy feeling underfoot. You get a little bit more of that in the Prime X, but you sacrifice a little bit of stability. The Pro 3 feels that little bit more grounded, and you're able to attack corners a little bit more if you're doing shorter races or reps in particular. But overall, I think the Prime X just gives you that little bit more oomph thanks to the illegal stack height.
So my verdict here is pretty simple and straightforward. I'm going for the shoe that I find most comfortable, most effective. Yes, it's £10 more expensive on the kind of recommended retail price, but the Prime X Strung for me is just a far better shoe. It's a shoe that I've enjoyed running in much more. The comfort is basically better, and that's a huge thing. You want to put on a pair of shoes that feel right from the start. And I just think with the Adios Pro 3, the uppers are just not quite right there. I get a bit of rubbing. I find them sort of slightly hard to get into position and feel good. I also find that, you know, they're great when you kind of hit that sort of almost like that perfect plane of movement in them, but they're not so good when you're kind of slightly off that. I think the Prime X Strung have got a little bit more of a sort of forgiving, wider base to run off, and I enjoy that kind of ride sensation much more, particularly during the course of a marathon where towards the end you might get tired. For me, you know, it's one of those where you sort of feel like if the Adios Pro maybe had a strung upper, slight tweaks to that kind of midsole unit, then it would be a great shoe. I think the Prime X Strung is really the one that kind of ticks the box for me though. So yeah, if you can get hold of it and you're not worried about the kind of the race legality of it, I'm personally not, because I'm not hitting podiums, then for me I think the Prime X Strung is just a much more fun, lively and useful shoe.
So my verdict on these two shoes is that Adios is quite an easy one actually. The Adios Pro 3 is a solid carbon plate racer that doesn't particularly wow in any way. It's not like the Vaporfly or the Alfly where you can really feel stuff happening in that midsole foam and that carbon plate. It's just more of a subtle carbon plate shoe. It's great. It does the job. I don't have any problems with this shoe. I probably would put it in like my top 7 carbon plate shoes, but I definitely think there's a lot more that beat it. Things like the Asics Messerspeed Sky, definitely the Saucony Endorphin Pro 3, and the Vaporfly and the Alfly. They all beat it for me. I think they're just better shoes for running faster in. They're just a bit more enjoyable. There's a bit more to them. But this isn't bad. It's by no means a bad carbon plate shoe. I just think there's a few more that are better than it. But yeah, it's fine. It's solid. If you like Adidas, you're not going to be upset by this shoe. But again, I just don't think it has any sort of amazingly wow-based features. The Prime X Strung, I think, is a fun niche shoe that some people will love going for a run in. I don't think it's a mainstream shoe. I think if you gave this shoe to 100 people, a lot of them wouldn't like it, and you'd end up with a percentage where maybe 30-40% of them said I really enjoyed that shoe. But I think a lot of people are going to struggle with that midsole foam and how it runs. But I do love this shoe. I do love running in it for certain runs, and my favourite type of run that I run in it is where I'm going out to just do a consistent pace run. So maybe I'll go and do a 10k or a 15k just running around the park. This just makes it feel easy. It just really just bounces you along and just makes you feel like you're not putting any effort. But you've got to pay attention to how you're running because, it is a bit wobbly if you're not paying attention.
So for me, it comes to the verdict. The decision is quite simple because I wouldn't race in the Prime X myself because it has got that 50mm stack height. Also, it rubs my heel and it's a bit more expensive, so I would be using the Pro 3 all the way. However, looking purely at performance, I do think that the Prime X does give you a similar feeling to the Pro 3, just with a little bit more oomph to it, thanks to the extra stack you've got there and those energy blades in the forefoot. So if you are happy to race in the Prime X as a 50mm shoe, then I think it's probably the superior long distance racer compared to the Pro 3. Shorter distances, I'd say the Pro 3 comes back into the equation a bit more because it is that little bit nimbler and more stable when you're going around corners, that kind of thing. It's got a slightly more grounded feel, a firmer feel underfoot, which I think helps a bit when you're doing shorter reps and races, although the Prime X will do those well, as long as you're not too worried about rounding corners at speed in such a high stack of foam. So it kind of does seem that if you add 10mm more of the same foam to a shoe plus those energy blades, you get a slightly more aggressive propulsive ride from it. But, you know, the trade-off there is a little bit more extra weight, a little bit of stability, and obviously the fact that it's not actually race legal. So overall, the Pro 3 would be my pick.
Okay, so that's it from us on these two shoes. Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, click the little bell and all of those sorts of things. And don't forget to check the channel out for all the other videos we've got, because we've got loads coming out. And if you go into the caption below, you can find a link to our podcast, which comes out at the end of each month. If you listen to it and you like it, please leave us a rating and a review, and give us some feedback as well. So thanks a lot for watching. Catch you next time.